welcome back to Refill with Preach Sista. I am your host, Michelle Lloyd Page. Twice a month, what I do is I invite someone into the studio and we have a conversation about refilling. In this space, in this refill space, what we do is we promote soul care through replenishing conversations. And we do this not just so that we can feel good and have our own tanks filled up, but we do this because it is important to not only put ourselves in a position to be full of good advice and good thoughts about wellness and well-being and wisdom, but we want to also do this so that we get to the point of overflow so that we have enough to pour into other people as well as staying filled up ourselves. As the saying goes, you cannot give out of an empty cup. So if your cup is feeling a little low, whether it's in the area of your spiritual life or your physical life, your emotional life, any area of your life where you're feeling you're running just a little bit low, I hope you got your cup and that you're ready for a refill because we are in the right place to have this kind of conversation. And I just want to say today, our guest is, and let me get all of these things running together in the right place, but I just want to make sure that I'm in, let me just bring her on and then I'll stop talking. There we go. So
Hi.
I'm so happy to bring on today our guest who is a very dear friend and colleague of mine. If you all have been hanging out with Preach Sista for a while, you know that she has been a regular presenter with the Preach Sista Ministry and our Fresh Anointing Conference. But Shayne, if you wouldn't mind just telling us a little bit about yourself and tell us, how is it that you got started with the you are blossoming, but the Blossom Counseling Center for Personal Growth and
Yeah.
Development.
Yeah. So thank you so much for having me, Dr. Michelle. As you mentioned, my name is Shayne McNichols, and I am a licensed master social worker. I've been in the field of social work now, going on 12 years. And so during that time, being involved in this type of work, I've worked in a variety of different fields, from foster care to nonprofit work, to working with the human trafficking population, higher ed. And then as of last year, September 2019, I started my own private practice, which is called the Blossom Counseling Center for Personal Growth and Development here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And it's been quite the journey. If I were to look back at 2018 and say that I was going to be starting a private practice in 2019, I would have been like, wait, I need a little bit more time. But we know when God pulls on our coattails and he's tapping our shoulders and saying, hey, I need you to move in this direction, it's in our best interest to follow what he's saying. So I did. I put a lot of my trust in him. I work with a lot of people already doing private practice and was able to come up with the name Blossom because it's important for me that individuals who work with me, from children to adults, have an opportunity to grow from the inside out, to flourish from the inside out. And so a big part of the work that I do, of course, planting seeds, giving them the confidence to plant their own and for us to work together so it can grow. So it's been great. I work with children from the ages of 4 to adults.
Shayne, so the image that I have up on the screen is something that I have pulled from your Facebook account, Flourish from the Inside Out. And I really love that sentiment, right? It's an affirmation,
Yes.
it's a mantra, flourish from the inside out. And I think too often we depend on things that are external to ourselves,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes.
We depend on things that are external to ourselves to validate us. We depend on things that are external to ourselves to feel good. But we have to figure out a way to begin flourishing
Mm-hmm.
um, from the inside and not depend on
Yes.
something that is outside of us because we can't
Yeah.
control the things that are outside of us. We can do
Absolutely.
something about the things that are inside of us. Can you tell us a little
For
bit
sure. Hmm.
so there's an idea that I have in my head about flourishing, right? So I
Yeah.
have an idea, especially when I walk into my living room and I see some plants are flourishing and some
Yeah.
plants maybe are not flourishing.
Hmm. Okay.
But Shayne, when you think about the word flourishing, what does flourish
Mhm.
mean to you?
Mm. So flourish to me means it's a statement word to me. It's very much an adjective, it's an action. And in order for things to flourish, we have to be able to see that it's flourished. But what
Mhm.
is important about therapy is the fact that oftentimes people might be looking at us from the outside looking in, saying, I don't see a change, but there's a witness or an understanding inside of us, like a lot has changed. My thoughts have changed, my feelings have changed. And so when you're able to awaken that on the inside of you, through different therapeutic concepts, through self affirmations, through utilizing different ways to change your mindset, then there's going to be a flourishing on the inside. Because as you mentioned before, there's so much outside of our control, which we call in our field the external locus of control. So it's in our best interest to do what we can within the bounds we can control, and we can control our thoughts, we can control our words, and then at that point we will be able to flourish from the inside out. But we got to have the internal self-awareness and buy-in for that to happen.
Yeah, and so there
Mhm.
comes a point where you just have to know the words that you're speaking over yourself, right?
Mhm.
Know the words
Mhm.
because it's one thing for
Mhm.
the words from someone outside of who you are,
Right.
to try to label you, to
Yes.
try to tell you who you are. It's one thing to have that kind of word come at you. It's
Mhm.
a whole 'nother thing about the words that you speak over yourself, the things that you tell
Absolutely.
yourself, and those
Absolutely.
things that you tell yourself are often the things that you're gonna
Mhm.
live into. Those are the things
Yes,
that you're going to
for sure.
be doing. So
Mm.
I'm so glad to hear that you are speaking
Mhm.
that and that you're helping
Mm.
people who come to your practice
Mhm.
to discover that within themselves, that there is
Yes.
power
Yeah.
within themselves, that there is flourishing within themselves. There's this
Yes.
internal agency
Mhm.
that they have. Um,
Mhm.
I'm curious, and I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this before, but I'm curious. What are some of those
Mhm.
barriers, either
Mhm.
that you found in yourself or that you see in
Mhm.
people who
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
come to talk with you? What are some of
Mhm.
those barriers that keep people from understanding the power of words over themselves, or keep them from really
Mhm.
seeing the value of who they are?
Mm. Well, one of the biggest areas of concern or blockages that keep people from seeing themselves, especially in a positive light, is a huge buzzword, but it's one that has been experienced forever, which is trauma. Trauma is a
Mm,
huge blockage. As we know, just a little bit on psychoeducation around trauma, it has many different formats, from bullying to homelessness to domestic violence to addiction to sexual assault, sexual abuse to race based trauma, etc. And so when individuals, especially the younger they grow up in households where they're born into a traumatic space, and they don't have, let's say, an emotionally mature parent, or they're in a situation that's unsafe, and they have messaging in that particular space telling them that they're not going to be any different than the train or the generational space that the family was in. Oftentimes those things sit and they stick and they stay. And
mm,
so when trauma is a factor, people start to believe those negative implications of what's being said to them. And they look around them and they see no reason to feel or believe anything different. And so a lot of that growing up piece, the responsibility of parents, the responsibility of having positive individuals in people's life is huge, because that wounded child turns into a wounded adult. And so when you don't have that opportunity to have that foundational groundwork or what it means to circumvent or to address negative ideations in your mind, or if you hear labeling that people say, it's going to be easier for that to stick and stay, because you don't have any other opportunity to see that as different because of how you were raised. So trauma, I think, is the biggest one that is involved in that particular space.
yeah. How do
Mhm.
people recognize trauma in their lives? How do
Mhm.
they recognize that this is
Mhm.
something is trauma having an impact as opposed to,
Mhm.
uh, you know someone tell you, "Well, you just get over that." So
Yeah.
how do you recognize the difference between trauma,
Mhm.
and just something that isn't trauma?
Okay. So there's definitely specific implications around what qualifies as trauma. Whether I talk to a child who's 4 or a person that's 44, I oftentimes say something really bad, sad, or scary that happened that you can't forget.
Mm,
And attached to that are different triggers. And those triggers will cause emotional, mental, social, physical implications. So, for example, if a person was abused by a tall male with a checkered shirt on, then anybody that they see with the checkered shirt is going to trigger them, even though they know it's not the person. It's going to
right.
cause them to feel something in their body, either to feel out of control, to feel unsafe, to feel sad, to operate out of avoidance, to possibly flashback or re-experience. And so there's a lot of implications that point to something being traumatic. We're very specific related to our clinical work around what that looks like. Everybody who experienced a traumatic situation doesn't necessarily get diagnosed with PTSD, which is post traumatic stress disorder. There's very specific things that have to be met for that. But in order for something to be traumatic, it's really what I mentioned earlier about things that you can't shake or forget. Therefore, you have a full body and mind experience based on that.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you for unpacking that.
Hmm.
So with the kind of work that you do,
Hmm.
and you do this, you have your own private practice, and you
Yeah.
also do this for a university as well.
Hmm.
So what do you do to take care of yourself? What fills you up?
Yeah. All right. So I had to learn through the years what works for me. I feel like different jobs that I've had along this career continuum has pulled a different part of me and has required a different part of me to show up for me. So, for example, when I was doing direct care work, working with children in the foster care system, at that time, what filled me up might look like, spending a Saturday and a Sunday and just really not doing nothing both days.
Mm,
Um, Oftentimes, when I moved into nonprofit, what that looked like for me was to be very strategic about what self care looks like in the workday as well, and to not just reserve that for before I go to work or after I go to work, but to say, how can I take space and time for myself in order to fill my cup throughout the day? So that might mean just taking a drive over to Reed's Lake and just sitting over there eating lunch there by the water, or praying, or listening to music, or even having a conversation with somebody that I love. In the work that I do right now, I do still live that mindset of integrating self care throughout the day, and that is taking breaks as well in that way. Music, taking a walk. Now that we're working more from home, taking my dog for a walk. Really mindful about what's around me. I've really been loving and being inspired by nature this year more than ever. The fall has really spoken to me differently. So
mm.
I'm seeing more of that about myself right now. Every morning, I start listening to the Word of God. I listen to gospel music that fills me up before I get started as well. So it really is a, what do I do when I wake up? What do I do to pepper in, or to filter in self care throughout the day? And what does the end of that night look like as well? So music, traveling, spending time with friends, my dog, nature, watching mindless TV, things like that. So it just depends. I tend to be very eclectic when it comes to the refill, but having to be really mindful to really break it up throughout the day is probably the biggest thing that I've learned about myself.
I'm so glad. First, I'm glad to hear that you watch mindless TV, so it makes me
Yes.
helps me, I feel affirmed. I'm not
Yeah,
by myself.
I see you.
Um,
I see you.
but I'm also glad that you mentioned, doing something throughout the day, not just waiting until the weekend, not just
Wow.
waiting until the end of the month, not just waiting
Right.
until, not putting
Mhm.
off, but just doing little things throughout the day. If you
Yes.
are working outside the home, or even more, if you are working from
In the
home
home.
during this
Yes.
time of COVID, right? Trying to manage so many things, trying to manage if you have kids, young kids at home, them doing
Mm.
homework, you doing your own work. If you have a partner who's also in
Yeah.
the house, trying to take care of the partner. If you have a pet,
Mhm.
trying to take care of the pet,
Yes.
all of that, and it would be so
Yeah.
easy to say, "Okay, the weekend's coming and then I can watch the movie. But just, as you said, something during the day, taking a walk. The
Yes.
weather, it's
Yeah.
November 7th here in Michigan and it's 70 degrees.
Woo.
Take a walk, go outside. That's one of the things I'm going to do when I'm finished with
Yes.
this is I'm going to go sit out on the deck, and just because
Yes.
I can
A-
enjoy the sunshine, right?
Absolutely.
So I'm
Absolutely.
so I'm so glad that you brought that up. And I'm not surprised that you have wonderful things in your life to help
Mhm.
you fill
Mhm.
yourself up, and being
Yeah.
mindful that. And I'm glad that you brought up being mindful, doing a check-in.
Yes.
How, how are
Yes.
you feeling? Is there stress
Yeah.
in your shoulders? Is there
Right.
stress, when you get ready to open your email, do you have this deep sigh that's
Right.
going on saying, I don't know what's going on, but
Y-
just, taking care of all that.
Yeah.
I know you love your work. I know you
I do.
you started um, the center because of the passion that you have, that you want to see people whole, that you care deeply
Yes.
for people, and that you want them to be their best selves. But
Yes.
either in this work or in other places in your life, have you ever experienced burnout or passion fatigue?
Absolutely. Yes, I surely have. I do public speaking as well, in addition to the work I do, individual and family counseling. And one of my main topics I talk about with professionals is burnout and compassion fatigue. When we think about
Mm,
compassion fatigue, specifically, just kind of go there a little bit, that is what we as helping professional individuals experience, because what we're doing is we're sitting there and we're taking in the stories of people every single day, all day. Another word for compassion fatigue in my field is secondary traumatic stress, because if you can
mm,
imagine hearing successive sessions around trauma and abuse and anxiety and depression and anger and personality disorder symptomology, etc. Of course, us taking that all in, we're still human, so that's going to impact us. And so when I do a lot of my public speaking, I talk about what are the signs related to compassion fatigue. And while I'm doing that and I'm talking to them, even my clients know this. Just because I have letters in the back of my name and I'm in the chair that swivels doesn't mean I got it all together. Like I've experienced these things too. And so that might look like avoidance. That looks like even having nightmares. It
mm,
looks like isolating yourself. It looks like having a change in appetite, not being as active, feelings of heaviness, anger, etc. And so,
mhm,
with that, when I educate others around that too, I first, had to have a self awareness of myself to say, where do I fall in this particular area? And so, experiencing burnout for me looks a lot like the things that I mentioned, being easily frustrated, or like you said, opening the email and be like, what now? Or being just overall tired and restless and things like that. And so what I've learned to do is just be very proactive in the moment that I start to see myself kind of shift a little bit to the left, check it right away and say, okay, Shayne, we're time to get in your toolkit. You might need to take a long weekend. Be very intentional about going to bed earlier. Think about how you're ending sessions more so. And I talk a lot about transitionary steps between closing the workday and then falling into your personal life. And so being very mindful about that, like, working from home has been very interesting, because what that means is to close the laptop, which is symbolic of work, and close the door in which I work in and say, nope, that's off limits, Shayne. You live into the
mm,
rest of your household. Um, and so for me, I've gotten better through the years with checking it, but sometimes it can sneak up on you, and all of a sudden it's just like, I thought I was doing okay, and then it's almost like it hit the back of the head. It's like, oh shoot, I wasn't paying attention to the signs. So we have to be mindful. God has created us in this amazing fashion where He will show us ourselves, and so He'll show us little things, and sometimes it's even getting a little cold, or it's again being a bit more operate out of cynicism and things like that, to say, all right, here's a sign. Make sure you take care of that.
mhm.
So I definitely have. If anybody is in this field or does any type of work where they're pouring themselves out a lot, 99.9% for sure would say they've experienced some level of burnout, passion, or compassion fatigue for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Shayne, I
Mhm.
so appreciate that you talked about transition rituals, especially in this
Yes.
time where many people are working from home, and so
Yes.
much is going on. So how do you
Mhm.
and that's something that I had to figure out working from home.
Mhm.
I've had an office in my basement for 20 years. That's as long as I've had it, a office in the basement. I've only
Love it.
used that office for when was March? Only
I
since
know.
March, right? Because
Yep.
I need it because before when it was I get to work from home, I would be working
Yeah.
in the family room, because I have
Right.
windows and laptop and it would be
Yep.
cool. But what I found out is that when I started working from home, I really
Mhm.
needed to have a place that was separate to work from home
Yes.
so that when I leave my office, it's just a short commute. So instead of 45 minutes, it's less than a minute, right? To walk up the
Yes.
stairs, but that
Yeah.
closing the door, like you said, closing the laptop, going upstairs and say, that's it. Because
That's
when I
it.
because before, because I was working from home, it's like, oh, I'll just keep going. But I've had to learn to say, no, I have to transition. I have to stop.
You have to.
And I have to make myself do something that
Mhm.
feeds a different part of myself, that feeds a different part of
Yes.
my soul. So whether it's like, okay, I'm
Yes.
going to work out, or I'm
Right.
going to make something healthy for myself,
Yes.
or
Yes.
I'm going to do some work on the website, or I'm going to do
Yes.
something else, but I've just had to be much more intentional about that. So I thank you for
Yes.
bringing up those rituals because I think that is
Yeah.
so important. So important.
Mhm.
Well,
Thank you.
well, we're living in a season where there is a whole lot going on,
Ooh.
and just a whole lot of stuff that is going on. And
Mhm.
and I'm sure you have people all the
Mhm.
time who are coming up to you say, "Hey, I need some advice about
Yeah.
something." And if
Yeah.
someone is coming up to you and we are um, trying to um, figure out,
Mhm.
what to do. They say, Shayne, really, what's your advice? I'm feeling a little down, feel like I've hit the wall. What's your best go-to advice
Mhm.
for someone who needs some refill advice?
So for sure, similar to what we mentioned before about external, internal, and so we call that again external locus of control, internal locus of control. So if you want to do some investigative work to figure out, okay, what exactly is triggering me or bothering me at this season of my life? Is
Mhm,
it on the list of external things that I can control, or is there in the list of internal things that I control? And separate that out and giving yourself permission to say, I can't do anything about how quickly they're picking the president. I can't do anything about when this COVID-19 situation is going to be over. I can't do anything about when in person work will be reinstated. That's external locus of control, but there's so much that we can do within our control. And so giving yourself permission to say, you know what, I'm going to set that over there. If you're a spiritual person, say, you know what, God, I'm giving that to you. That's the list for you that I can do nothing about. And I'm going to do the same with this list as well. But there's actions, there's steps that I can take to really control more of what is in my control. And so oftentimes I tell people too, because we talk a lot about self care, which also is used as like a coping skill sheet for my clients. And it's
mhm,
divided into three sectors. It's body, it's mind, and it's spirit slash soul. And to say, okay, what are the things that you're doing in that area right now to take care of yourself there? And so it's a visual activity. So then they look at that and they say, oh, shoot, I'm not really doing a whole lot for my body. I'm not doing a whole lot for my mind. Oh, yeah, my spirit has been neglected. But so things like that. So they look at things in a visual context, and that gives them an opportunity to say, well, I know visually where I need to beef up that area. And we work together to see what that looks like. For sure, the trifecta when it comes to wellness is being active, having nutritious meals, and then also sleep. When we don't have those three areas together, then we're oftentimes like a sticky surface for symptomology, especially for depression and anxiety. And so being sure you're getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep, being sure that our meals are packed with nutrition, being sure that we're getting up and walking, and moving our bodies as well. So we talk about that, and then we talk about how do we infiltrate other activities for the mind: journaling, consistency with counseling, for the spirit, prayer, church, for the body, mindfulness meditation or deep breathing, etc. So I'm a person, I'm very much a visual person. And I attach with what the person's best way of learning. But I know no matter what style of learning a person has, when they see on a piece of paper that body circle only has one thing in it, they're like, okay, I know what I need to do. And so that's my biggest advice. Look at the body, mind, spirit, and figure out what's one thing in each area that I can do for myself every single day. And then being very mindful to be consistent with that. And that might involve accountability with other people to say, hey, I talked to my therapist about needing to take a walk every day for at least 20 minutes. Can you check in with me and make sure that I do?
Mhm.
I need to drink more water because dehydration also has mental health implications. Okay, what's an app that could keep me accountable for that? So being sure that they are leaning into those areas and being as creative as possible to be sure they're consistent.
Oh, thank you so very much. I have
Yeah.
one more question to ask you, and I didn't prep you on this one either, but
Uh,
I'm sure it's one that you have gotten it.
yeah.
As you were talking, I was thinking, it's like, "Ah, yes, this is such well, not only in this conversation, but just in knowing you, the work that you've done with Preach Sister, you are definitely a strong woman of God. You are a
Oh,
strong
thank you.
woman of faith. I
Oh,
so
yeah.
appreciate the way that you weave faith into the things that even when it's doing um artwork, right? That
Mhm.
is creative art therapy. That's the word that I wanted to use.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So even with that, what
Mhm.
do you say to someone who says, but should a Christian really go to a counselor? Should a Christian
Mm.
really go see a professional counselor?
Mhm.
What is your response to that?
Yes. In the front.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yes,
I like it.
everybody,
Just yes. I was like, "Okay,
everybody.
yes, okay, here was gonna go. Okay, just yeah." No, the answer is yes.
Yes, everybody. If you have a mind, thank God, which everybody listen to the sound of my voice, and people who will see this later, we need an opportunity to have someone we can sit down with and talk in an objective fashion. It doesn't mean your faith is small. It doesn't mean that you're not trusting God. It doesn't mean that you don't believe or stand on His word if you go to a therapist. There was a doctor, and I wish I remembered her name, but she said something really powerful that I've taken with me, especially when it comes to breaking the stigma within church related to therapy. And it is prayer is a weapon and therapy is a strategy.
Ooh, I like
And
that.
so, with that being said, still use your weapon. Shoot, by all means, bring the weapon into session. Let's talk about how we can talk about cognitive behavioral therapy and incorporate that into your prayer life. Because when we think about CBT is all about dealing with the mind and the thoughts and how that shapes our emotions and our behaviors. And CBT really, I had a professor back in grad school who did probably a 15-page study on how cognitive behavioral therapy is attached to the Bible. Let's say, for example, you know how it says, as a man thinketh, so is he. That's the concept that we use in therapy as well. Your thoughts are going to shape your perspective of yourself, of the world around you. And so God is in the therapy space as well. What our concepts that we use are rooted in biblical truths as well. Even if we don't say God or a Bible verse or say faith or anything in a session, we know that we're operating out of those principles because, again, thoughts control a lot of our lives. And the Bible talks about being anxious for nothing, and it talks about meditating, and it talks about whatever is good and lovely and true and honest, etc. Think on these things. Those are biblical concepts as well. However, what we are able to do is to help a person to create a treatment plan and to create a goal and to create opportunities that are evidence based to practice different concepts and things. So keep your weapon of prayer, but then also incorporating therapy. Those two together, oh my goodness, what a powerful combination.
Oh, thank you so much. You have been a fantastic guest for us today. Thank you so much. We will
Thank you.
have you back again sometime.
Okay.
So I have a screenshot of your Facebook
Mhm.
banner that's up here, the Blossom
Yes.
Counseling Center for Personal Growth and Development. Are
Yes.
there other ways that people can get a hold of you, and
Mhm.
what would that look like?
Okay, thank you so much again for having me. I appreciate it. Anything that Dr. Michelle is a part of, sign me up. I don't even have to know. I trust her. I trust the God in her. And so I totally appreciate you allowing me to talk today with you and allow the viewers to be a part of this conversation as well. So, related to Blossom, the best way that you can contact me related to individualized therapy, family therapy, also public speaking related to mental health topics from trauma to self care to wellness planning, to conflict resolution, things like that, you can contact me through my Facebook page, which is stated here, or Instagram. The handle is Blossom Counseling Center, so you can find me there. Or lastly, my email address is blossomcounselingcenter@gmail.com. So I'm very adamant on responding to those messages. So feel free to reach out to me if you have a question, if you need a resource, a referral, etc. Feel free to reach out, and I'd love to be of service to you and to help you or your family out. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm so excited about that, and I would encourage anyone who is needs an objective voice in their lives, needs someone to talk through
Hmm.
some just issues that are going on, or just need to know, okay, is this a something or is this not a something?
Right.
Please reach out to Shayne, because
Thank you.
she is a wonderful, wonderful person.
Mm,
She's a wise woman. She is a godly woman.
thank you.
Um, just reach out. You don't have to struggle alone.
No.
You do not have to struggle alone. And I so appreciate you saying, and I wholeheartedly affirm, seeing a counselor does not mean that your faith is weak.
Yeah.
You That is a tool that God has allowed and gifted some people
Mhm.
to actually to be able to speak into our lives. We welcome people to speak into our lives all the time, but you have to
Yeah.
be careful about who you allow to speak in your life.
Woo.
So a godly counselor speaking
Mhm.
into your life, that's a
Mhm.
win-win. That is a
Thank you.
win-win. So yeah, so Shayne, you are located in Grand Rapids, Michigan, but in this time of COVID, are you doing telehealth as well?
Yes, I definitely am. Thank you so much for bringing that up. I am doing telehealth, and I use a HIPAA compliant platform for individuals to contact and for us to do sessions. And it's been really great. It took an adjustment for all of us to switch over to that platform, but it's been one that's been really helpful, and I've seen clients enjoy it a lot. So when you reach out to me, feel free to ask me questions about what that would look like, and I'll be glad to answer that as well.
All right. Thank you so very much. And so now we are about to head out. And I just want to remind everyone that you can get a hold of Preach Sister on all these different ways. So on Instagram, it's the official Preach Sister; on YouTube, the official Preach Sister channel. And then, we have the Refill with Preach Sister Facebook group. That's a private group where it's a bit more accountability, just to keep in touch with everyone. Every day I am posting a positive affirmation or a self-care idea on that platform. So feel free to join in that group.
Mhm.
And of course, you can always find us on the web at preachsista.org. This is the month of November. And in the month of November, we have a monthly wellness challenge for Refill. And our wellness challenge this month is gratitude, because we know that gratitude changes everything.
Yes.
And to the right, you'll see a little thing that says Autumn Gratitude. That's a free little ebook that I created. It's 30 days of gratitude. So it's a
Mhm.
30-day challenge, and each day there is a different gratitude challenge. If you go to our website, and if you go to our Preach Sister Facebook page, you will find a download link so that you can download it. It is free. We don't
Mhm.
want anything in return, but if you want to give us something, we'll accept it. But it's a free gratitude journal. And it's just a way to be mindful of all the things that we can be thankful for and some of the things that we take for granted. So I would encourage you to do that. Our affirmation of the month is I choose happiness,
Mhm.
because we have a choice and how we experience life. And so this month, I'm saying I'm choosing happiness. No matter what's going on, I'm choosing happiness, and I'm
That's
encouraging you
right.
all to choose happiness and well. And so, again, thank you so much for joining us for Refill with Preach Sister, where we have replenishing conversations so that you can fill up until you overflow. I'm Michelle Lloyd Page, and thank you again for joining us.
All right. Thank you.